Those of you voting for the motion is the right and left divide can never be bridged. Those of you voting for the right and left divide can never be bridged, say yes. Yes! And now against the motion, those of you who feel that the right and left divide can be bridged, raise your voice now. Yes! I think it's fairly evenly balanced. Veer, over to you.
The motion is the right and left divide can never be bridged. You voted on that. At least from here, I couldn't tell which side won. This time it's very easy for me, and it'll be very easy for you once I explain, because what I'm speaking for is the blessed truth. Now, we all hear about this term left and right and can't often know where it all originated from. Once I explain, it'll become very easy. You see, the first major explosion against the fixed order, against injustice, against imperialism, against the system of monarchy, against elite, was in the year 1789 in Paris. The Bastille was overpowered, and the people of the world, not only the people of France representing all aggrieved people of the world, met in the National Assembly. As they were about to debate, came in those who didn't want change, who wanted elitism to continue, who wanted oppression to continue. And it so happened that in the National Assembly, as the president was addressing them, those who were pro-change, it's obviously more even then, now it's almost complete, except of course a very dangerous section of the right. Now, the ones who were in favor of change gravitated to the left, and ones who wanted monarchy, imperialism, the rights of the nobility, oppression, moved to the right. And that is the beginning of the term left and right. Pro-changers and no-changers. Those who want revolution, those who want things to change, and those who are fixed in an order. Now, in addition to that, as time went on, the term right acquired for itself certain virtues, that is, of going back in orthodoxy, of going back in history, reframing their own plastic history, their own fraud history, imagining history, imagining heroes, imagining pieces of God or whatever, symbols of God here and there, and casting depredations upon people who did not believe in such obscurantist ideas. It's happened not only in India, it's happening on a large and uncontrollable scale in India, but it's happened all over the world. It's happened in Donald Trump's USA, it's happened in Bolsonaro's Brazil, it's happened in Turkey, and everywhere they've been toppled, and here again they'll be toppled. Now, coming back to this question, left and right meant progressives and regressives. So, and they are fixed points like north and south. They can never be bridged. So if you वहीं से भेजा है.
Left and right is a Western construct. In India, we believe in civilizational unity. That is the foundation of our civilization. What are the great Mahavakyas of our past? Ekam Satya Vipraha Bahuda Vadanti. There is one truth. Wise people call it by different names. We can disagree, but we agree that there is an essential unity, not only in nationhood, but in civilizations. What was our approach? Aro Bhadra Kritavo Yantu Vishvata. Let good thoughts come from all directions. What is written outside Parliament when you enter? Udar Charitanam Vasudev Kutumbukam. The world is one family. Left and right are creations of ideological expediency. Our approach is to see what can be rectified in the bad and how can the good be improved. That is why you will be surprised. It was the Congress that banned the RSS, and perhaps rightly so, in the 50s. But it was Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru who invited the RSS to join the 1963 Republic Day parade because of the excellent work they did in supporting the government during the war with China. Because I disagree with Savarkar. I disagree with him in his purporting Hindu Rashtra. But who is it that gave him the accolade of a postal stamp released in his memory? Indira Gandhi of the left. This is our civilization. Adi Shankaracharya and Mandan Mishra. They were as opposed to each other as the left and the right, even more. They were not divided forever. They met, they had a talk, they discussed, and they created a synthesis. That is the real ethos of India and not in and of the world also. What did Deng Xiaoping say? It does not matter whether the cat is black or white, so long as it kills mice. The nation is more important, not these artificial divides. And I tell you, in 1977, the BJP, then Jansangh, and the Communist Party came together to form the Janata Dal. It's a fact. Manmohan Singh, as finance minister, introduced the liberal reforms which the right wanted in the name of socialism and Jawaharlal Nehru. This is the truth of India. We have to build a nation and we have to see how to come together.
Invented in Western civilization and in the wake of French discontent against the monarchy. But the tendencies have been existing much before that, both in West and in the East. Left actually signified the tendencies interrogating the structures of powers and privilege. In Western tradition, we have the symbols like Prometheus, who brought fire to people, fire to men, and suffered the wrath of gods for that. Then we have, for example, again in Western civilization, going back in history, Spartacus, who rebelled against the Roman oppression and became a kind of Adi Vidrohi, as Amrit Rai, the noted Hindi writer, called him. In India, for example, who was Nachiketa? And what was his crime? That was he was cursed by his own father, Mitve Twan Baksyami, because he was challenging his own father for doing the wrong things in the name of right, for doing right-wing things in the name of left. That is why Nachiketa questioned him, and he suffered the curse, Mitve Twan Dasyami, Tav Kasmai Mam Dasyasi, Mitve Twan Dasyami. And then, in early modern India, we have Kabir, who questioned every existing norm of oppression, of authority, and actually proposed an alternative epistemology. The point, my dear friends, I am making is this, that terms are given at a certain point in history, but tendencies and phenomena exist much before being termed, being named. We must never forget that. So therefore, and another thing which I would like to add to what Sircar Sahib has already said, basically, why is this fascination about bridge building between left and right? Is there a history to that or not?
The proposition that the left and right divide can never be bridged is both counterintuitive and contrafactual. Not only does the bridge exist, but I dare say many people right here have walked back and forth across that bridge. And as a student of language and literature, let me tell you that whenever you have propositions with words such as never, always, you have to raise your antenna and you know that there's something wrong, because categorical generalizations do not really work in the world. I'll give you a simple example going back to what my learned predecessors said. In the Indian tradition, Vam and Dakshin Panth, these were terms from the Tantra. And if you look at the Lalita Sahasranaman, then Savya Pasavya Margastha. So you can reach the goal through both left and the right. Both are legitimate. That is the Indian tradition. As to the French Revolution being the first rebellion against monarchy, I want to correct my worthy opponent that it was actually the American Revolution. But somehow the Eurocentrism of history, deflects the truth, because the American, so to speak, freedom fighters were also slave owners, which is a terrible thing. They fought against the monarchy, but they owned slaves. And similarly, don't forget what happened in the French Revolution. They invented the guillotine, and there's a direct link between the guillotine, the gas chambers of Hitler, and also the gulags of Stalin, and the great leap forward of Mao, where almost 30-40 million people died, according to Frank Dicotter. So, ideological purism is not only very dangerous to humanity, but it is simply false. So then, how do you reframe the debate? And let me propose to you that the debate is not between left and right, but between right and wrong. And we must stand up for the right. And I don't mean to say that the right wing is always right, not at all. Nor do I say that the left wing is always left out, because socialism, communism, these ideologies, pseudo-scientific, resulted in millions and millions of deaths. And even today, in our neighboring country, there's no freedom. Everybody is under surveillance. So these ideologies simply do not work. So the fight is not between left and right, it's between right and wrong, it's between dharma and adharma, and the fight is between those who want India to do well and those who do not care for India. Thank you so much.
That left and right can never be, the divide can never be overcome. You have to change the terms to create some kind of unity. So you have actually admitted that the divide cannot work. Both Pavan and you, Makarand, because you changed the left and right to right and wrong, but those are totally different parameters. Left is this hand, right is this hand, and when they are vectors in opposite directions, they can never meet. That's pure, simple physics. But they can also not meet because they are organized around totally different parameters. The right is organized around the issue of cultural domination, around the issue of cultural wars, cultural superiority, cultural inferiority. The left is organized around equality, justice, in the economic sphere. The two spheres are incommensurable. They cannot meet unless you change the terms of the debate, unless you change the parameters, as our opponents have just admitted. They've already given up. But the third most important is that in these 30 years, we have seen processes of economic inequality. We have seen processes of a new rule of the 1% globally as well as nationally because of the phenomena of corporate globalization, deregulation, knocking out environmental laws and rights of tribals, rights of farmers, and the rights of workers. This is part of a global process. But the same powers of the 1% who want to stay in economic power are undermining the economic debate by putting a cultural divide and rule in place. That's why, along with the rise of globalization, we have witnessed the rise of new identity politics of division. We have seen Samuel Huntington talk about you can only know who you are when you know who you hate. When in reality, you can only know who you are when you know who you love. The economics of the 1% is married intimately to a division among people and a destroying of the fabric of unity. That is why the politics of hate and fear is the shadow side of the economics of limitless greed. The divide and rule that prevents the unity needed for the politics of economic justice and quality.
Makarand ji said, there are people on the platform who have walked across the bridge. I happen to be one of them. And so when I speak with the confidence and with the understanding that the left and the right construct do not apply to Indian governance model. India has its own construct, and which is something I'm going to be talking about when I speak against this particular motion. I would like to bring to everyone's attention Srimati Indira Gandhi ji, when she was asked in an interview that would you call India a left-leaning nation or a right-leaning nation, she said, I look at India as a country which leans towards pragmatism. It takes the best of both worlds and ensures that the country moves forward and the country's concerns are supreme. In a multicultural country like India, in a diverse social setup like ours, in a setup where there are different languages, there are different transcripts, it is not a choice that we choose of centrism. It is the need of the hour. And that is why there are various instances which Pavanji has already given examples of, whether it was about Veer Savarkarji's stand, whether it was various, differences in terms of understanding how the systems work. I can give you the most latest examples. Manrega happens to be the biggest welfare scheme which was opposed by the Bharatiya Janata Party when they were in the opposition. But today, that particular scheme, it was called a phenomenal, monumental disaster. But when the Bharatiya Janata Party came into power, that is the very tool that they have used to be able to provide employment. So what would you call them? Would you call them right-leaning? Would you call them left-leaning?
Very nice of him to remind us about the weapons of torture. But does he remember that there were riots in a particular country, particular state, where between 1 and 2000, the BBC says 2000, people died when the police looked the other way around? No. Pavan K Varma has his own point. Priyanka also mentioned the secret fear that all of us had about the BJP coming to worship Narega. You see, the whole idea is that the right is now trying to come over and take over the disguise of the left to reach the people and to cover all their sins of vision and religious extremism, the continuous setting off of riots. They are now trying to put up a people's face, a progressive face, by trying to hijack the left. Thank you.
People concede that they have lost in their rebuttal. What did Jawhar say? Jawhar said that the right is borrowing ideas from the left. This is precisely what we are saying. The left takes ideas from the right takes ideas from the left. And I am reminded of a couplet, जो कहता था कल शब संभलना संभलना वही लड़खड़ाया सवेरे सवेरे. Who was a member of the BJP? I am not making any personal criticism. I am saying stop this black and white polarity. His leader and somebody for whom I have great respect, and I was vice president of that party, Mamta ji, was a member of Atal Bihari Vajpayee's cabinet. Let's be clear. And let us also be clear when Vandana ji suddenly makes two opposite claims, that the left stands for empowerment and freedom and the right doesn't. I want to ask you, I have served in Moscow, I have served in East Europe. The kind of authoritarianism I have seen in left-controlled countries cannot be even equaled by some of the right-wing dictatorships. And so I say to you, empowerment, democratic freedom. I want to once again reiterate to you, don't become mimics. Nobody likes photocopies. India is India. It's a unity. The left will learn from the right will learn from the left. We will try to improve both and work towards a great and future India.
Communist countries had a very nasty record of human rights violation. And I'm saying this with full knowledge of myself being a committed leftist. This is important to underline the difference between communist countries or communist parties and the idea of being left, in the sense of being opposed to any kind of oppression and marginalization. This is extremely important distinction which we should never forget, and some people try to forget it deliberately, and some people forget it in their bholapan or naivety or whatever you call it. Secondly, yes, reconciliation. In the first place, borrowing ideas is one thing and sheer political opportunism is quite another. So when someone declares to the parliament that this Manrega is a great monument of your failures, and then without having ever said sorry for making this statement, continues with Manrega, this is not reconciliation, this is pure and simple political opportunity. I really do not want to discuss politics of the day, because to me this is a much more serious and philosophically profound question. It's not just about current Indian politics. It's about the idea of understanding the history and probably on the basis of the future direction of human evolution. We are talking of reconciliation. Yes, of course there can be reconciliation. For example, the South Africa constituted a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Reconciliation between the practitioners of apartheid and sufferers of apartheid, not between the ideas of apartheid and equality. There can be no reconciliation with the idea of apartheid. There can be no reconciliation with the idea and practice of untouchability. Let us be very clear about it. Reconciliation has its own limits, like everything. As Einstein said that every good thing has limit, only the stupidity is unlimited. Let us not forget that.
Some really important things. When the riots in Gujarat were mentioned, nothing was said about what happened in Delhi in 1984. Nothing was said about 26/11. When we were attacked, under whose watch did that happen? Nothing was said about the millions and billions of Indian rupees that was siphoned off from our banks. Who did all of that? Under whose watch was it done? And worst of all, my friends, nothing was said about the horrors of partition, about the ideology, of extremism, which said that Hindus and Muslims cannot coexist, and so that Muslims should get a nation. And that ideology of Pakistan is still alive, and we are still being bled by 100 or 1,000 cuts. So let's not paper over history. We are for reconciliation and not for extremism. And those who say that the divide cannot be bridged, I'm afraid, are either lying or they are actually dividing us for their own benefits. Thank you so much.
You need to go into another system to talk about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which is the principle I follow when I protect biodiversity. It's another phase, space. We have to stick to the left and right phase space. And I think there's a huge confusion between political opportunism and bridging a divide. Of course people have moved across political parties. That is pure political opportunism. It has nothing to do with the unbridgeability of the ideologies of the politics. The individuals don't carry all that politics. The second, if projects and the credits of projects are borrowed from the opposition to a new ruling party, that too is not bridging a left and right divide. That's another kind of political opportunism. Projects are not ideas. Political careers are not ideas. They are not civilizational principles. Civilizational principles are not defined around left and right. Left and right are incommensurable. Organizing principles of higher order is another thing.
What is opportunism? What is being rigid about an ideology? What is the understanding of left-wing and right-wing politics? And that is when you start losing ground. When you say you believe the concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, and on the other hand, you're also talking about why we cannot live as one family. Goes to show you all have lost the debate. When anger precedes your arguments, then you know you've lost the debate. So the debate was not about can this never be bridged. The debate is they can be bridged. And for the betterment of this country, it is time that we talk about bridging these differences, because we cannot be fighting on the basis, our arguments cannot be on the basis of self-interest. They have to be on the basis of people's interest. And that is why we need to take the best of both worlds, understanding our diversity, understanding our cultural history, understanding our civilizational responsibility, and moving towards a direction which would be not the right-wing politics, not the left-wing ideas. It is going to be India's ideas and India's story and India construct. And that is what That is the reason why I stand against this idea of nothing can be bridged. I'm a big peace lover. I think everything can be bridged. And so can the left and the right.
It seems to me that both sides have adopted quite distinct strategies. The strategy of Jawhar's side is to define left and right to suit its own interests. It could be principles of a higher order, to borrow Vandana Shiva's term, but essentially their definition is that the good guys are the lefties, the bad guys are the righties. It's as simple as that. Pavan's team has taken a different approach, which is, there's no difference between left and right, we're all Indians, let's talk about Indian culture, etc., etc. Now, are these two approaches reconcilable? Are they saying something completely different?